student and teacher relationships, whether those are good or bad, are really what determine the level of success or, heaven forbid, the failure in your classroom.
So,
and then we have a super modern, well, what we consider modern and dynamic classroom environment. So we are actually in the process of moving classrooms right now. So this is a fake background, but typically we have lots of alternative seating. We usually have a theme to our classroom. We have kids setting up on counters. We're always up and moving. Obviously last year was a little bit different, but that's how in a normal year we like to do things.
right. And we've gotten really lucky this year. We've moved into a classroom that's much, much bigger than our former classroom, and it has double doors into a second room. So we are super excited to be able to move around and have that extra room. And we've got lots of plans, you know, that we'll be using it. Okay. All righty.
Okay. So we saw on Monday, now we don't use Zoom in our district, so this is kind of different for us, but we saw on Monday where one of the presenters did a thing where you could like put a stamp on the screen, and we're like, oh my gosh, that is so clever, because we can't do that in the things that we use. So unless there is something special that we have to do to allow that, we would like to try it, but we've never done it before. So the idea is that you could take one of those little annotate tools and kind of mark which Venn diagram represents the way that your co-teaching team looks like, assuming you were co-teaching last year.
And they should be able to do that if you want them to.
Okay.
Yeah, if you click on view options, the second up to the bottom says annotate. If you get that annotate, if you click annotate, your tools will come up and you can get a stamp.
Thank you so much.
So we've got three things up here, really. You know, there's really three basic types of co-teaching relationships. Some, the master schedule says you're co-teaching, but really you're not. The one teacher teaches in their room and the other teacher pulls out, and that's the way it goes. There's also that second type where one teacher is in the class with kids and another teacher is taking attendance and making copies. You know, that one never really works either. Then, of course, you've got the one at the bottom where you've got a good combination of things you do together, and you have some specialties that you do separately, but, you know, that is your goal. That's where you want to go. So from what we see, we've got a lot of people that are down at the bottom, but we've got several that are up there. We've got several in every situation. So we're going to talk to you about how we've made things work in our classroom. And afterwards, we'll have question and answers, and we will answer anything you ask us. So, you know, please just make sure to let us know what it is that you want to know, and we will definitely try to get to that. So let's go on to our next screen.
Alrighty, so this one, oh no, how do I make those go away?
Clear. That work?
Yes. Oh, thank goodness. Okay, thanks for bearing with us. Okay, so this is what our Venn diagram looks like. We just took the bottom one, blew it up, and then listed some of our individual strengths. So it's not that both of us are doing every single thing every single time. There's just not time in a day for that. But we do plan together. It is our room, not my room and Ms. Voss's room. We instruct together. We both handle behavior, but I'm typically responsible for grading and running like the technology aspect of parts, even though, you know, right now I'm not totally sure what we're doing, but
she's good at it, trust us.
In the classroom, I can do it. And then as the general ed teacher, I have like an understanding of the curriculum. So does Ruby, but just when we sit down to plan, like I'm like, oh, here's all the bullet points from all the VDOE stuff.
Right. For example, she has everything memorized as far as the standards. I do not, as far as what they're called and so on and so forth. But there are some things that, you know, like I said, the grading, we do a lot using technology. So therefore, she usually looks at the grading. We make grading decisions together, however. How much things are going to count for, what we're grading, why we're doing it. We have a joint spreadsheet where we know every assignment that's given out and what every student has done on that assignment. You know, so those are the things, even though she handles the grading, we still do all of the other things together.
Right.
Just like communication, I do the majority of parent communication. Not because Amber cannot or Amber does not enjoy it. It's just the way we run things. And I do, of course, the SPED paperwork, and I also take care of, you know, the specially designed instruction when it comes to students with math goals. And there are things that we specifically address. What we have found, though, as we'll go on and we'll talk a little bit, is that we use a lot of, you know, SDIs in our entire group. Even though it's not necessarily needed, we have found that it's a high leverage practice and it has the most bang for its buck. And our students across the board, whether they have IEPs or not, are doing great. You know, their data, there's plenty of data, and we'll talk about that, that shows how much improvement they make over a year with us. Okay.
So we're going to talk about a few of the facets of co-teaching that we do together. And yesterday during the first presentation, I was so excited. I was like, oh my gosh, Ruby, this is what we do. We co-plan, we co-teach, we co-assess. It was perfect. So to let you know just kind of what that looks like in our classroom, we're very fortunate that we have the same planning time, but yesterday's presentation went over a bunch of creative ways to plan with somebody, even if you don't have that sit down time with them. So, you know, you can work on an online document, you can chat before, after school, you can even just shoot each other a text or a phone call. There were lots of good ideas yesterday. We don't need to go through all of that.
A lot of the things that are something that we didn't know, that we just kind of realized in the last couple of years, is we might be in a more unique situation in that we literally spend our days together. We come to school together at 7 o'clock. We leave school together at 5:30. We spend a lot of time at school. We're not saying you need to do that, but that's just what we do. But our planning time in all of our classes are together. So we are always together. When we plan, mostly Miss Benson is the organizer. She's the one that has the template and types things out. We discuss what we're going to do and how we're going to address things. And as we do that, we definitely, you know, make sure that we spiral any material that we need to cover based on data from the previous week's assessment, which is something we'll talk about here in a little bit as well. Okay.
And then we have definitely, when we are planning, developed a routine for ourselves. So in our situation, our kids know they're going to come in, they're going to do a focus. If there's something new we're learning that day, that's going to happen next. And then we will practice, but I don't mean like sit and do a worksheet. Typically, when we can, it's getting up and doing something out of our seats. This last year, a lot of it was virtual. We still did a lot of whiteboard problems. We just had to Clorox a lot of whiteboards.
Yes, we did.
So practice may not be like, well, it's really never sitting down and doing a worksheet for us, but that's kind of our routine. If your routine is that you do a lot of station teaching, then that's what you need to be planning for. And of course, referencing whatever your district has given you as far as a pacing guide, or all of the beautiful VDOE documents that were described yesterday, right?
Yes.
Yes. All of those are wonderful places to look when you are planning what you're going to do for that week or what you need to do with the different topics.
Right. So the big thing is, though, is make sure you know where you are and make sure you know where you're going. Because without a good, solid plan, you're going to get lost. You're going to get behind. And that makes it very, very difficult. So, okay.
Okay, and then the rest is, I mean, we can talk more about these things later if we need to, but, you know, make your notes, make your slides, whatever you're doing to drive instruction, definitely have those examples pre-planned. Do not recommend just winging it ever. Make sure that you gather or create whatever you need. And then one of our favorite parts is analyzing the data for anything that you're going to be spiraling that week. Or this year, especially, we know we're going to have to do a lot of pre-assessment to see where kids are from last year. So analyzing any of that data before you get into a new topic.
Right. Okay. All right, so we're going to look at some data here, and this is something that we do every day. Now, I want to just mention that I used to, before I taught with Amber, I taught in Northern Virginia a lot of times by myself. I had self-contained algebra, self-contained geometry, and I'm going to be real honest with you. I was one of those people that said, I don't need all of this data. I know my kids. I know exactly what they can do and what they can't do. And I could, and I did. And my kids were extremely successful, except that there were just a few of them. So it was easy to keep that in my head, to make sure I understood what was going on. But when I came to, work with Amber in the 8th grade in Roanoke County, we had 75 kids. I realized, holy mackerel, I cannot keep up with what every single kid knows and doesn't know. So Amber, who is wonderful with data, showed me, and I, intuitively could read it because of all the reports I read for special ed and so on and so forth. But it is so important to have, what we do is we have a weekly spiraled assessment. And we look at the data from that assessment to make decisions about what we're going to do the following week. It's not just a test to get a grade to put in the grade book. It is very much an assessment to decide, where does instruction need to go next? Was there anything we missed that we need to reteach? Or was there anything that our kids need a little bit more practice doing that we put in the focus each day?
Right, so this was our actual data from our first benchmark, our first countywide benchmark that we gave last year. And of course, this year was kind of crazy, right? Kids were taking it virtually, they were taking it at home. But I feel like we still got some pretty accurate data, because if they wanted to cheat on inequalities, they probably would have done a better job. So we would take something like this and we would go through and we would look at each standard and say, okay, they can do squares and square roots. They can evaluate expressions. They can do equations actually pretty well. Kudos to them. And then when we start getting down into these areas here, this 58 and 45%, that's the percent of students that did 70% or higher. Real number system and ordering numbers. We know that we're going to have to practice that more, right? 58 is so close to being at a decent number. I mean, we're always working for improvement, but we feel like they're right there and we can get a little bit better. So we'll do stuff like that in our focuses, in a normal year when we have more time, in our exits as well.
Right.
But then when we get down to the bottom here and we see these percents that are in the 20s, we know that those topics have not stuck. We are going to have to do simplifying expressions and inequalities almost from scratch again. We're not going to sit and go through notes again, but we're going to reteach it in a different way. We're going to do activities with either the whole class or the majority of the class to go back through those topics again.
Right. And make sure that we can rework those skills.
And we can go check each individual question and we can pull out students who have strengths in that area. Whatever testing system your district uses, get comfortable with using that, or like figuring out how to go through each little piece of data to pull those things out.
And be careful not just to rely on a score. A student can score a 90% and it looks like everything is great and good, but they got a 0% in real number system. They need that extra help. They need that specially designed instruction in real number system. But if you just go by a score in the grade book, you're not going to get that information. You've got to delve a little bit deeper.
So after we do that, we've planned, we've gone through data, we've used the data to create our plans. Then we get to teach,
Yes.
so, which is the most fun part. And we use a variety of the 6 co-teaching models. We're not going to go through those today. That's not what this is about. And you've already heard that, did a wonderful job. But when we say tag team effort, we're always trading off. Right? So maybe I am up in the front of the room at this minute, and then the next minute you turn around and Ms. Voss is at the front of the room. Maybe Ms. Voss is working with one student off to the side on something, and then the next minute I'm working with somebody off to the side on something.
Right.
So we have just developed that relationship with ourselves and then also with our students, that we can just kind of flow in and out of whichever they need.
Right. And, the big thing about it is sometimes, or in a lot of situations, there's a way that Miss Benson prefers to solve a problem, and there's a way that I prefer to solve a problem.
Okay.
We will always show the kids the both ways. And then later they will actually refer to it. I'm going to use the Benson way, or I'm going to use the Voss way, which doesn't bother us because every person thinks differently. We even have methods that we've named after students who have come up with ways to solve different problems. So, you know, we do that as well. We do try our best to come up with new and creative approaches of teaching old ideas. If you look at the slide, you know, we came up with a vertical line test that is more than just drawing a vertical line. We were using spaceships and cows and laser beams that lift the cows, you know, solving tricky multi-step equations, that whole unit. We used a princess theme. And in this situation, the prince is trying to save the princess, but to do so, he will have to slay a dragon, blow up a tower, and then solve. So those are the ways we do things.
They definitely need some creative ideas to get them started, because if you just give them that equation to begin with, that's so intimidating, especially as 8th graders in just regular math 8. That's a lot to look at. But when we come up with something that's kind of funny, a little bit silly, maybe you get dressed up that day.
Yes, we do a lot of dressing up.
They remember it better. So
All right.
So after we co-instruct, we co-assess, which we talked a little bit about already. We do weekly spiraled assessments, but we are constantly assessing in class. So whiteboards, clickers, we've used ClassFlow a few times. We'll have kids get up and move around the room, like answer A is over there, answer B is over there. Or we took, whose idea was it? I feel like we saw it at AMLE, where Katie Powell's, where they make like a physical shape with their body, depending on what the answer is. Just to be constantly assessing stuff in class.
Right. We do that a lot when we are constantly using those whiteboards, and we can look up and we instantly know who's got it, who doesn't. And usually just by the answer they get on their whiteboard, we can immediately tell what mistake was made. Right. So one of us will quickly go to that person and show them. If it's more than one person, then we make a quick group at a table that we're going to call our review island. And the kids just walk up, get that quick review, go back and jump back in without any, without losing a beat.
And that's a big reason that having those pre-planned examples is really important, because then we already know what some of the common mistakes are, and we can tell based on their answer what they goofed up on. You can also use the quick checks for that, because it gives you all the common
JIT quick checks are awesome.
And then after we assess, we talk about it.
Yes.
Not just with ourselves.
No.
So we would look at that data, the red and green and yellow and orange. We would look at that, and then we would turn it into something that's easier for the kids to digest. So you can see on the screen an example. We had a class that named themselves Kiki Waka, and this is how they did on a test. They did really good on absolute value, not so great on fractions, decimals, percents. And we went through that with them, and then we showed them the questions that they had missed. So like maybe on that question, they only got like a 23%. So we will go back through it with them. And then through the year, we track their progress. So we'll show, okay, on this week's assessment, this is how you did. And then the next week, it went down some. And then we went back up, and then we went down. And we do show them all of our classes. So like the blue line is one class, the gray line is one class, the orange line is one class. But they're more competing with themselves. Right? We know not all of our classes are equal in ability, and that is okay. But they want to do better than they did the week before.
Absolutely. So, when you look at, say that, if you look at the line graph, or you look at that second test, if you notice blue dropped, gray dropped, orange went up. And then we ask why. Well, maybe it was because orange that week had great attendance and blue and gray had lousy attendance. Okay. So we actually teach the kids to look at those things. We ask them, what do you see? What happened this week? And somebody will say, well, Kiki Waka, who was the orange class, they went up and the rest of us all went down. What happened? Well, let's look at attendance. Let's look at different things. And actually we encourage kids, and the kids will say, we got to come to school because we got to do better, and that's how not only we teach them to use data for a positive end, we're teaching them how to use line graphs and learn about percentages, and they don't even know it.
Oh, yeah.
So it works out really.
Makes some other things a lot easier.
It makes other things a lot easier later in the year.
Because they've already done it for 20
Right.
weeks.
And those data meetings also really form a tight bond in those classes, because as a whole, they want to do better.
Right.
As a whole, they're going to bring people up. So there's never anybody just left out. Because people will pull up together, and that's one of our favorite things.
We
It's one of the best things we do.
absolutely never single anybody out.
Right.
This is a whole class effort. As a whole class, we got a 90.5% on absolute value. It doesn't matter that Timmy missed all 3 questions. Nobody's going to know that.
Right.
As a whole class, this is what we did.
Right. Now I know that, and Ms. Benson knows that. So if we
But
have
they
to
won't.
but if we have to pull Timmy out to make sure, or just actually, I don't ever pull anybody out. I just go look at Timmy and say, hey, Timmy, I wrote you this card and I want you to look at these steps on how to do this. And then we're going to talk about it. And that's most of the time, all they need to get what, an absolute value, and they're set. Right. Okay. All right.
Okay, so we've co-planned, co-instructed, co-assessed, talked about it with our kids. And we just want to emphasize that we literally do co-everything.
We do. When we've got people that come to visit us, whether it's for the co-teaching initiative or whether it's just in our Roanoke County, people know us as Benson Voss. When we are given duty assignments, we are listed as Benson Voss. It's just the way we have worked with each other, and we were determined to do this from the beginning. We're more than just a teacher plus a teacher. I've heard presenters say, if you're not getting 2 teacher salaries worth, then co-teaching isn't being done well. And I disagree. If you're not getting more than 2 teacher salaries worth, then you might be doing it right, because we actually believe that we're teacher squared. We actually grow exponentially working with each other and our students. And we know we can say it, but we can also show it to you. If you look at the charts that we've put up, when we started in 2016, 2017, those were the scores for our kids that we had in 2017, 18, when we started out together. We took their final SOL scores based on their 7th grade SOL, and we found the pass rate for each of our classes. So as you can see, our very first classes were at 42%, 62%, and 58%. By the end of the 8th grade, and we realize we're comparing apples and oranges with the SOLs, but we're talking about the knowledge base and how much students have learned. We can take them, to the end of the year with 96% pass rates across the board. And that's for students with IEPs. That's for students that fall into that middle category where they're not sped, but they're not at the top of the class either. So we are really proud of what we're able to do. Of course, this last year was tough.
And our numbers were not as
And our numbers were not as high as they usually are. But, looking at the kids that we had this year, this virtual COVID year or hybrid COVID year, looking back at their scores, we don't have them from the 7th grade year, but we did look back at their 6th grade scores. We don't have them up here, but we definitely made improvements. Our pass rates were not what we wanted them to be, but they were significantly higher than any others that we've seen, just talking to other people in the state. So our kids did improve. There's going to be some catch up to play next year, but we're all going to be in that same spot, and we're ready to tackle that together. Okay.
Ready? That's what we do, basically.
All right.
That was just about a half an hour.
Yeah, we did that.
Wasn't too bad.
So this is who we are. These are our email addresses. We do have Facebook and Twitter pages where we like to post a lot of what we do with our students. We also have a YouTube channel, which we literally have, if you teach 8th grade math, instructional videos on every single standard in the 8th grade curriculum, because we were tasked to do that for our county.
As well as SOL review, and then probably a couple hundred random
Videos.
worked examples of different kinds of problems.
Yes, so there's a lot of information
so-
there. So
It's a lot. And as far as, well, Facebook and Twitter, we didn't post as much last year as we wanted to, but we're going to pick back up with that. Our Teachers Pay Teachers store is still kind of a work in progress, because when we made all those videos, we were also tasked with making all of the like guided practice / notes. So we have them all. It's just a matter of finding time to get them all up there. So definitely go check us out on any of these, but they are always growing and changing.
yes. And, you know, our videos are up, and if you want to borrow them and use them, feel free. We very much believe that we are all in this together. Amber and I are here to help kids. And if we can help you in any way, we are always willing to do that. So just reach out.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so anybody who teaches 8th grade probably feels like they just hit the lottery. But I was going to ask you guys, have you put any of your stuff into Go Open Virginia?
In what?
Go Open Virginia?
No, we don't know what go.
Okay, I'll have to talk to you about that. Oh
boy.
It's an open source education site for Virginia, teachers in Virginia.
Yeah, it's interesting. We did find that this year, several different schools in Northern Virginia, who knew me prior, actually used our videos for their entire 8th grades all year. So we're like, oh, cool. We used our stuff, and we love it. We want to help kids, and we enjoy what we do. So if anybody has any questions, please ask away.
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, stop sharing so we can all kind of see each other again.
Okay.
So Ruby and Amber are going to continue to be here throughout our break time that we usually have. So they're happy to answer any questions or talk to you about strategizing. I'll also be here if you have any questions or anything that you want to talk to me about, but feel free to take this time to step away and take a break. We will officially start back again at 2:30.